Okay, let's get started. It's NJ Gloiper. We're back, and tonight we're reading Sources of Power by Gary Klein, Chapter 9, Nonlinear Aspects of Problem Solving. Okay, right away we got Chief Trumpster. Let's see what he has to say. Let me bring him up here. Right, you can speak. What's up, Chief?
Hey, how's it going, NJ? How's your day been?
Hey, it's been good. It was a long work day. I felt like it went on forever, but
Yeah.
now we're done. Now we're reading. We're relaxing. I was gonna watch Nick's what's it called, the RNC, I guess, coverage, but I after last night's I don't even want to watch it. I don't even want to watch it.
It's so bad. Like it's so like awful.
It's just the lowest common denominator, like slop, and it's not even for. I don't even know if it's slop for anybody. I don't know who's supposed to be excited by that.
The boomers.
Yeah, I guess
You
it
know,
made
for
me want to kill myself.
for me, what's more torturous is being in spaces and having to explain why. It's actually not based in red pill to have Amber Rose up speaking.
Yeah, it's I don't know how you can even try to explain that to somebody. How do you end up watching someone like that in the first place? Like, if you know who it is, like, you're already cooked. How do you talk them out of that?
It's just so bad. Like it's so funny too because like this goes to the bigger point I've been pushing and talking about forever. It's like, are we gonna be a party, like a big tent party, where everybody's let in and like we lose all of our values, or are we gonna be a party that has some sort of standards? Where's the quality control?
Yeah, where's the boundary? Like, is it just a free for all of the time, or is everybody allowed in? It's like it's analogous to like there's that debate that's going on right now where it's like, should anybody in the world be allowed to vote in any election? Why does it have to be only citizens can vote? And it's like a serious discussion that some people are having. And I don't know
Yeah,
if you don't see the utility in citizenship and you don't see the value in nationalism or any kind of like distinction between a citizen and a non-citizen. Yeah, you're cooked, man. Yeah, you should go to a country where there are no citizens. Yeah, you should be somewhere where everybody's tolerating everything all of the time.
yeah, and it's like the whole issue. It's like you have these people saying, "But we have Amber Rose. She got like millions of followers. Cool. We lost the party. Congrats." I
Yeah,
mean,
at what cost? At what cost did we gain Amber Rose?
it's like Thanos. It's a Thanos snap thing. It's like it's like I won, but at what cost?
But at what
Ev-
cost? It costed
Everything.
me everything.
Everything.
Yeah, I don't want to, gain the world and lose my soul, man. I'm an American, okay? I don't really want to give up my country just so other people can vote or so they can feel good or so that, other people can feel good about about them voting in our elections. I don't care. I'm an American, okay?
Yeah, it's just sad.
Yeah. So I won't be watching. I'll catch replay gang if there's any good
Yeah.
parts. I did clip last night. Nick had some good monologues. He was going off. That was good. I'm here for it. I'm not disavowing Nick by any means. I'm disavowing the
Disloyal.
RNC. I'm blacking it out. I'm boycotting the RNC.
Mm. Disloyal. Disloyal.
Yeah, I'm cooked. I know. I got it. Okay. It's over.
Right, right. Yeah, but I mean, like, what else been up to? I mean, it's good talking to you. Like, last time I joined, you ended the space so quickly. It was like you hated me or something. You left the space immediately after a join, and
I
like,
hate
oh,
everybody,
I'm
okay?
tired
I
or
hate
something.
I hate everybody. You're just, you're caught in the
Uh,
crossfire. You're no different than
uh,
everybody else, okay? All right?
yeah, well, you're just like the rest of them.
Yeah, yeah. You're like those other girls.
Oh, wow, yeah, right,
Look,
right, just like the rest.
but
Mm.
yeah, it was, dude, it was late. I was up till like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. the other night, and that's really late for me. I don't usually stay up that late, so that was I was getting real sleepy. I didn't even know what to say at some points. My brain was just turning off. But
Mm.
today I'm good, man. I got some work done. I got what did I do today? I did some shopping. Pretty much that was it. I got to go pick up I got to pick up a coffee grinder. I just got like a kilogram of these beans, and they're fantastic. But I've got to get a grinder for them. I've only had them ground up for me already, so
Mm.
I got to get it together, man. I got to get some stuff for this place if I'm gonna live here.
Right. Yeah. Well, my day was just kind of boring. It's like I really wish I could do politics full time as a job, so I don't have to go to like work all day and be bored. I could do cool stuff and like troll people online and or whatever. But you know, we're not there yet. I need a bit more time. You
Look, if
know.
you keep grinding, you keep carving out a spot for it. Eventually, I mean, by 2036, you'll have definitely carved out a spot for yourself to do that
Oh
full time.
yeah, that is 1,000%. I'll be able to say, hey, by 2036 and like 10 or so years from now, I'll be old. Actually, now I'm thinking I'm old now. Great, you made me feel old. Wow, this is yeah, great. I hate thinking about me being old. Can you imagine me 10 years from now? Back in my day, I remember when Trump won.
It's so bad already. I'm like,
Oh
yeah, I started
no.
watching Nick in 2018, like, oh
Well,
yeah, yeah.
well, hey,
Like,
hey, Brett said 2036 is close to when Barron's be able to run. So,
yeah,
or
it's
actually,
gonna be the Nick Barron ticket, man.
yeah, true. Yeah, exactly. That's what Nick's gonna run too. So you know what? That's not as bad. But I'm still gonna feel old. I'm gonna be like, I remember when I was a young, spry groiper in training. And it's like I remember using Zoom.
Oh man.
I
Yeah,
remember the
remember
Zoom life.
TikTok? Hey guys, remember TikTok?
Hey guys,
Shut
remember
up,
uh,
old
remember
man.
D Live? Remember D Live days? Remember
Shut
the
up,
Ninja
Grandpa.
Genies?
You're rambling again.
Hey, I used to have to send the Ninja Genies for a read off of a super chats. You
Yeah,
know.
let's go. Actually goated though. Those were awesome.
Yeah, that's a W. That's just there should be like cozy genies. Can we have cozy? Yeah, hey, maybe in 2036 we'll have cozy genies for cozy.
Look, if I have more time on my hands, maybe we'll do some plugins for Rumble or something. I gotta start talking to the Rumble devs. I gotta start getting in there. I gotta figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, what? It's a little bit of a side topic, but I honestly I do need to have like an edit for like my 50K celebration or something. I need like
Mm.
yeah, a really good edit. Like,
Well, you know what? We have someone in the audience right now who's a listener, and they have a goose profile picture. But
whoa,
they learned how to edit recently, so they're actually learning how to make edits, and they're pretty good. They're like CapCut edits, but they're still very good. Like this, I think he's like a natural. I think he's going to be a professional. You just have to ask him. You just have to reach out and ask him. I think he's ready to make a really fire edit.
yeah. Well, the thing is, like, I have no time anymore because I'm doing like everything all the time. So I have no time to make an edit for myself. Really cool. What I'm thinking about, just looking back to like 2016, where I had my very first video on YouTube with you canceling Trump, and like, something like with that tying that into like all the cool things that have happened over the years. Maybe I'll include
Yeah,
some pictures of like AFPAC, or well, like AFPAC 3, the trip, and like not like where I was or anything about me in it, but like like pictures of like the beach in Florida or whatever, or something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, like something that's not identifiable, basically. Essentially, yeah, that's kind of the main thing. But I mean, anything about a really cool way of like I guess tying in like 8 years of work into one video.
That's
So
not hard. You'll figure it out. I think that there's enough key points that everyone remembers, and it'll sort of be like a time capsule in a way. It'll like all these like baby groypers, all these groypers who don't even know who like Jake Lloyd is. They get to go down memory lane. They could take
you
a
know
trip.
I am confident in like I know a couple of years. People will say, "Who's Jaden again?" I forgot Jaden's name. Who's that guy
Yeah,
again?
dude.
That'll be literally true in like 10 years for sure.
There's there's people who don't know who Ethan Ralph is, and I'm like, I love you. I'm like, I love you.
Right. That is awesome. Yeah, exactly. We're getting closer to that day.
One day,
So
soon. They
very
won't even know
soon.
our names.
Yeah. Well, hey, they may not know me, but all they know is that I was 4 times Q scraper, and that award would never be given back to anyone else. So that's a historical event. You know, I mean, like, no one else before them Q scraper in history. That's like the first of its kind. No one has
Uh,
that.
well,
That
listen,
skill.
Karlin Bashenko said Goose was a close second. Okay, so maybe you have
But that
competition. Maybe you have to defend the title. Maybe you have to get
no,
plastic surgery.
I'm no, I'm confident in who I in just the aura and the looks. I'm not. There's a reason why I'm 4 times. I
All right.
basically I put the FR1 FR2 into one category, but it's technically 5 times honestly. But you know, I'm humble. I say 4 times.
Technically 5 times.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I had it literally I got it at AFPAC 3 with the Lauren Whiskey saying her random Telegram post saying Q scraper. Then at Vegas where she confirmed I'm still maintaining the title Q scraper, and then at both FRs they said the exact same thing, and then Carwin said it at the AFPAC 4. So it's like pretty obvious that is the reason why I'm 5 times. It's not like
Mm.
a joke or whatever. It's just it's just a reality.
It's not a joke.
Yeah, it's just real. People like the T50, right?
Yeah, I'm over here with like shit brown eyes. I'm over here with brown hair, brown eyes. Oh well. What are you gonna
uh,
do?
yeah, yeah, but yeah. I hope that they do have like the F event like in Florida or something. That'd be great. I
Yeah,
wish they did that.
I love the sunny weather. I like the sunny beach weather wherever it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do wish they would do that, but yeah, I want to go and crash your whole book space or whatever, but I just want to come up here and say hi to you, and
No, I'm glad you did. It's always a pleasure, Chief.
yeah, and hey, now you can never end the space, and you're stuck up here forever now because if you leave, I will know you're cucking the content and you're ruining it.
What if
All
I
right,
just fall asleep and let the space go? What if I just do that?
then I will wake you up with a bunch of like sound effects in the space. I'll
Oh
be
yeah,
playing.
like that
I'll be
one time.
playing. I'm playing the. I'll play that a lot, and you'll wake up.
Yeah, bro has never unplugged his soundboard, not even once.
You know, and the funny thing is, that actually worked. By the way, I did that to somebody in the space and woke them up from it. So it does work.
That's
So
true. That's verified.
I
Fact
forgot
check.
who it was. I forgot who it was, but I did to somebody else. Oh, no, actually, it was on a Discord call. Oh no, and it was on Space and a Discord call too. By the way, yeah, it
It
was on
was
both
it
of
was
those.
literally me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I forgot it was a Discord call or a Squarespace. For Goose, I did the exact same with Goose too. For Goose, it was a Discord call, which is funny.
You really are like the Joker.
Yeah, of course. I'm a
Yeah.
madman. I'm a psycho in a good way.
I could be your devil or I could be your angel.
Yeah, I'm Team Awesome. Actually, I'm Team Troll, Team Fun.
Let's go. Are you team super love?
Sure. I'm not part of the group chat though.
Mm.
You
We'll get
know,
you in there.
yeah, I'm part of the group chat. I don't know how much of that team I am actually because of that.
Don't worry, we'll get you in there. We just got to make sure that the content is chief safe. It's chief approved.
Hmm. Real. Yeah, we'll see. We'll
Incel, by
see.
the way.
Yeah, I don't even know the whole premise of the group. I thought, wait, no, I kind of bashed the group initially. I said like Super Love is that some sort of like LGBT like club or something, but like no, I don't know what it is. So you know, we'll see.
Team super love, number one LGBT group chat on Twitter.
Right, right.
You heard it here.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Well,
That
I'm gonna
is
start reading. So I don't care if I'll leave you as speaker, but I am gonna start reading. So if you're gonna do sound effects, hey, I don't even care. You can go ahead and do that.
No, I'm not gonna do sound effects or anything like that. No, I'm not gonna do that. But what I po- well, hey, I might go troll a little bit though in some other ways.
Okay. Yeah, I'm cool. I'm game.
Right, right. All right, I'll leave this up for a little bit.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming up. And feel free to jump in whenever you want. But
Yeah, honestly, I might leave and head back later or whatever. I might go and troll you then, you know. So
yeah, yeah, feel free to request whenever you want, man. Always welcome. All right. Tonight, we're reading chapter 9 of Gary Klein's Sources of Power. And chapter 9 is titled Nonlinear Aspects of Problem Solving. So, we just finished up chapter 8. And after chapter 8, we had a really good discussion with Chief and Book Cat for like an hour after the chapter was read. So if you didn't catch that, you can catch that on the replay Telegram, AF Spaces. But let's get into chapter 9, nonlinear aspects of problem solving. People become problem solvers when they have to find a way to create a new course of action, improvise, notice difficulties, way in it. Yeah. Again, this is like the weird grammar from Israelis. Notice difficulties way in advance or figure out what is causing a difficulty in the first place. The concept of leverage points opens the way to think about problem solving as a constructive process. It is constructive in the sense that solutions can be built up from the leverage points and that the very nature of the goal can be clarified while the problem solver is trying to develop a solution. So technically, you don't even have to have a solution when you start this. The most important thing is that you're looking for cues, you're looking for leverage points, and you're trying to connect them. You're trying to find, I guess, related ideas, or you're trying to find points to jump between the two. And using those points as ways to find more leverage points or just to, clarify the goals better. It's all about observing and collecting more data and assessing your situation as much as possible, as much as you can within the limits, within the boundaries of the situation. Let me see here. Yeah. In rock climbing, there is no correct solution. The climber looks at the available holds and figures out what direction makes good sense. This approach to problem solving can be traced back to the German research psychologist Karl Duncker, one of the central figures in Gestalt psychology in Europe. And that's Duncker, Duncker. The Gestalt school emphasized perceptual approaches to thought. Rather than treating thought as calculating ways of manipulating symbols, the Gestaltists viewed thought as learning to see better, using skills such as pattern recognition. Duncker in 1935 and 1945 had asked people to think out loud so he could gain insights into their thought processes while solving well-defined and ill-defined problems. One of the tasks he used was the X-ray problem. You are a physician needing to treat a patient with a tumor. You can use X-rays to destroy the tumor, but the radiation will also damage healthy tissue. What can you do? There are a few acceptable approaches, as befits an ill-defined problem. One of the more satisfactory solutions is to use several X-ray sources. Each could transmit low-level radiation that would not be harmful to healthy tissue, yet could be aimed to converge on the tumor and destroy it. To find this solution, the subjects had to elaborate the goal of destroying the tumor. The goal included the property of not injuring healthy tissue. Eventually, the problem solver identified a new goal of exposing healthy tissue to only small amounts of radiation. Duncker found that as his subjects worked on these problems, they simultaneously changed their understanding of the goal and assessed solutions. A subject might think of a solution, try it out, realize it wouldn't work, realize what was missing, and then add to the definition of the goal. So this is sort of like you hear this a lot from self-help and motivational people, um, especially like the what would you call it, like the therapy crowd. They talk about how failure is actually success, or like you can fail upwards, or failure actually like that actually. What's the classic one? It's like you fail 9,000 times, but all you have to do is succeed once. What they're telling you is that failing actually gives you more information, or failing isn't like you can fail, but if you treat your failure as like another situation, you can learn from it. You can observe your failures and you can critique them, and you can basically use it as more data to illuminate your goal better, or to re-strategize and regroup. So this new definition would suggest new approaches. And when these approaches failed, they help to clarify the goal even further. So yeah, it's like you're like meandering towards the goal, and each time you fail, you see a new aspect of the goal. You're not on the right path, so you're kind of like adjacent to it, or you took a like a roundabout way, but you still saw a glimpse of it. You saw it from a different angle, so you can kind of visualize where you should be headed better. um, Maybe you're off target, you're off the path, but that doesn't mean that it's now harder to see where you should go. It might actually be closer um, than if you had not failed. So sometimes these things give you a perspective that you would not have had if you had just tried something else that didn't fail, or whatever. So um, that's not to say that you should accept failure, or that you should be okay with failure, or just kind of like integrating it into your process. What you should be doing is like uh, you should be an opportunist. When you do fail, don't let it get you down. Don't take it like personally, or like let it weigh on you emotionally. Instead, use it as just data, like cold hard data, and you can approach it just like you would any other situation, any other data. And that might help you become a better problem solver. That might help you come up with a better strategy. To solve ill-defined problems, we need to add to our understanding of the goal. At the same time, we generate and evaluate courses of action to accomplish it. When we use mental simulation to evaluate the course of action and find it inadequate, we learn more about the goal we are pursuing. Excuse me. Failures, when properly analyzed, are sources of new understanding about the goal. The leverage point account of the leverage point account of problem solving requires a nonlinear rather than a linear approach. We can think of problem solving as consisting of four processes: problem detection, problem representation, option generation, and evaluation. And there's a figure here. Um, it's mainly like a circle of these four steps, but evaluating and representing the problem are connected. So it's a circle, but with like a line through it, connecting those two nodes. So of the four nodes, evaluation and representation are connected. So you're always evaluating the problem, and you're always trying to find a better representation of it. Even as you apply leverage points and generate a course of action, um, like you're going around the circle and you're detecting the problems and opportunities. You're always updating your goal. You're always seeking you can think of it as like people always talk about how you could be tracking something, and really what you should be tracking is where the thing is going to be. Not You're not chasing the ball as the ball's moving. You're chasing where the ball will be. You're like tracking it and predicting where it will land. So maybe you don't have an equation for the physics, like the trajectory of the motion of the ball. Maybe it's some kind of like weird nonlinear or non-continuous path that it's taking. It's changing direction, it's changing speed. You can't really get a beat on it, but what you can do is you can estimate and predict, and then follow your prediction until it doesn't match up with reality, and then you can make another analysis. You can generate a new prediction, and this is the best way to kind of stay adaptive, to stay on top of things, to keep yourself from falling behind and keep yourself from just tracking the ball where it is. You can kind of estimate where the ball will be, even though you can't perfectly predict it. So this is what he means by nonlinear problem solving. You're always updating your predictions. It's continuous. The account shown in figure 9.1 does not have an output stage because each of the components can lead to different types of outputs. Problem detection is itself an output, as in the warnings offices set up by governmental agencies whose job is to provide early detection of problems. So that's like its own function. Even though it's part of the process, detecting the problem is its own output. So the input is whatever inputs you would use to detect a problem, whether it's data, and you could even segment that data, the input data, into like visual data, numerical data, audio data, whatever data you can think of. Maybe it's census data, it doesn't matter. You're detecting a problem and you're using whatever observations you have at your disposal to detect that problem. But the output is, did I detect a problem or not? Is there going to be a problem? So temporally, you can figure out, I guess, across different time spans, if there was a problem that you hadn't detected before, that would help you predict future problems. So sometimes even looking at old data is useful. So that's why he's saying it is itself an output, problem detection. So it has its own role to play, and it is its own cycle, essentially. Problem representation is another output, sometimes the necessary and sufficient output for determining how to proceed. There are medical diagnosticians whose responsibility is primarily to provide skillful problem representations. Generating forecasts is itself a professional specialty in many fields. Constructing a course of action is the component most people think of as the output of problem solving, generating a plan for achieving a goal. Regardless of how the option is generated, it will need to be evaluated, often using mental simulation. The evaluation process can lead to adoption of the option. The formatting is really bad here. The evaluation process can lead to adoption of the option, result in selecting between options, or identify new barriers and opportunities, thereby triggering additional problem solving. The problem solving process contains different types of outputs, depending on what is needed in the situation. So this is totally situational. And that's why the cycle can basically be stopped at any point, because some situations only require that you detect the problem in the first place, not necessarily that you come up with a plan. So if you're a financial advisor, sometimes it's better to just let your client come up with the plan. You just have to detect the problem. So it can be very specialized. Figure 9.1 shows why this is an interactive account. The goals affect the way we evaluate courses of action, and the evaluation can help us to learn to set better goals. The goals determine how we assess the situation, and the things we learn about the situation change the nature of the goals. Yeah, this is like the definition of a feedback loop. This thing is always, you're informing the goals by sorry, I just got a message. 1 second. Oh, okay. I'll respond to that later. I got to go off. So this thing is like a self-referential feedback loop. So your perception is defined by your goals. We talked about that the other night. So one thing you have to do is realize that what you see is not all there is. So everything you see is totally affected by what you expect to see and what you are trying to do in some situation. There's that famous experiment, and this was talked about many, many times in the Thinking Fast and Slow book. The experiment where there's a group of basketball players and they're passing the ball back and forth, and there's an observer, and the observer is tasked with counting how many times the ball is passed back and forth between a certain team. And in the background of the video is a guy in a gorilla suit, dancing, jumping up and down, making himself completely visible in the scene, but nobody notices it. The observer is asked after, counting the times the ball was passed back and forth, and the I guess the scientists or whatever, whoever's administering the test to these people, they ask, well, did you see the gorilla? And they're like, what gorilla? What do you mean? I was watching a basketball game. I was counting how many times people were doing this, because their goal was kind of like shaping their vision. Their goal was totally changing their perception of the video. Someone else who's not tasked with looking at and counting the amount of times a ball is passed can easily see the gorilla. It's just like part of the video. It's part of their perception. But someone who's focusing on the ball moving around doesn't see the gorilla. So this is what he means by it's a feedback loop. Your goals define your perception, and your perception defines your goals. It's totally a feedback loop. So sometimes you have to break yourself out of it. Sometimes you have to go just try something. Sometimes you just have to go out into the field, stop worrying about your perception, stop worrying about your goals, and just go act on the world. And then you can go get more information and go update your goal, and that updates your perception, and so on. So that's why he also says is like this loop can be broken at any point, because at any point you may need to break out of it. It's totally situational. So depending on what you need to do at any time, you may see something, you may not see something. It's up to you to kind of be self-aware of your own perception and your own blind spots, and try and detect and collect as much information as you can, regardless of if it affects your goal or not. So like cherry picking data, that's bad because it's a blind spot. It's not really bad because you're discarding like information for whatever subjective reason. It's bad because you're not using all the data. You may be missing something. So while people turn that into like some kind of, political statement, or like they were leaving out that data on purpose, they must have, and they draw conclusions about that. They like find motivations to explain it. They must have left that data out because X, Y, and Z. Well, maybe they were just blind to it. Maybe they thought it wasn't useful, but it actually was. So maybe you should tell them that they're missing the data. So there's a million reasons why you might not perceive something, and it may just be because someone told you not to look for it. They told you to look for something else. So be careful of when people tell you to perceive something a certain way. Be careful of when people give you a certain goal, because both of those things shape how you act on the world and how you perceive the world. So again, I'll just read that quickly again. The goals affect the way we evaluate courses of action, and the evaluation can help us learn to set better goals. The goals determine how we assess the situation, and the things we learn about the situation change the nature of the goals. Goals define the barriers and leverage points we search for, and the discovery of barriers and leverage points alters the goals themselves. The way we diagnose the causes leading to the situation also affects the type of goals adopted. Further, the leverage points we notice grow out of our own experience and abilities, another layer of interaction. So again, it's like completely subjective. He's telling you that you will see something different than someone else based on your experience and your abilities. So your cognitive limitations, what school you went to, what your diet was like, what books you read, all that information is going to change how you interact with new information, and how you detect more leverage points and come up with more goal-seeking behavior or more plans of action. To review this nonlinear account, We will examine each of the components, starting with the problem detection process. Something happens, something anomalous, and we may notice it. Perhaps a rock climber notices that the route has more debris on it than usual, or an expectation is violated, or something expected did not occur. In example 8.4, the pilot flying to Philadelphia did not seem to notice how much the margin of safety was being compromised. The problem representation function covers the way a person identifies and represents the problem. Is there a gap between what we have and what we want? Is there an opportunity to achieve more than we expected? Both gaps and opportunities can trigger problem-solving efforts, either to remove the gap and obtain what you want, or to harvest the opportunity. Say that the rock climber gets a little higher and notices that there has been a small avalanche. The pythons, I think it's pythons. The pythons she counted on using are covered up, so she may have to find another route, maybe retracing her steps. Or she can find better holds and keep going. Leverage points are part of the problem representation. We try to detect the leverage points that can turn into solutions, as well as the choke points that can spell trouble ahead. In some cases, identifying the leverage points can count as the critical type of problem representation, emphasizing the lines of reasoning that may be most important. Not all gaps or opportunities lead to problem solving. They must be important enough, and the problem solver must judge that the gap or opportunity will not be resolved without special effort. Then comes a difficult judgment, the solvability of the problem. Somehow, we use our experience to make this judgment, even before we start working to come up with a solution. Part of our situation awareness is whether this is a problem we should be able to solve without too much work versus a problem that can take days or weeks and get us nowhere. You can think about how that would be evolutionarily important. So, the caveman sitting there figuring out how to break open the rock that has water in it or something, like, how do I get water out of this coconut? There may have been one guy who figured it out after weeks, but all the other ones who probably did it for weeks probably died of thirst. So if you believe in evolution, if that's your prerogative, that would be like the case where it's like, yeah, that long problem solving with no, what would you call it, solution was probably like bred out of existence in favor of like quick, low resolution, instinctual thinking, where it's like, can I match this to any problem I've solved before? If not, just ignore it. It's not even part of my perception anymore. I don't want to seek a goal. I don't want to come up with a plan. It's not worth it. And that's how you get, like, I guess what you would call system one thinking, where it's all instinctual, it's low resolution. You're not doing any complex analysis. You're really just reacting to something almost, what would you call it, reflexively. So you couldn't even explain how you came to that conclusion. It's usually too fast, or so it's done subconsciously, so that you haven't like worked your way to that conclusion. It kind of just appeared in your mind. And that's sort of the situation that he's talking about. That's what experience does for us. And the more experience we have, the better our instinctive judgments are going to be. But there's still never the only solution. Sometimes we do have to work it out, but we never initially start with system two thinking, or we never start by calculating it. We use our instinct first, and that's what he's saying. So be aware of that as one of the heuristics that we use for problem solving. First, you always use instinct and experience, and it's usually subconscious, and you're not even aware of it. It's just something you do in the background. So if you come to the conclusion that something can't be solved just by looking at the problem, maybe there is a way to solve it, but it's going to take a lot of effort. Maybe it is going to take a lot of work, but it's not going to be done instinctively. It's not going to be done through experience. You're going to have to go research something, or ask an Go ask an expert. Therefore, the function of problem representation includes goal setting, because the problem solver must judge whether to try to come up with a solution or turn to other needs. For ill-defined goals, we can expect to see a lot of goal modification during the problem-solving effort. When a gap or opportunity is identified, often we will try to diagnose it. This is the mental simulation function in which we try to weave together the causes that might have led to the current situation. Because diagnosis is not always required, it is portrayed as an elaboration of problem representation in Figure 8.1 and is shaded. We may also want to project trends based on the diagnosis to see how the situation may change in the future. This is the forecasting process. In many situations, the primary need is to build a reliable forecast in order to determine whether the difficulty will disappear on its own or will get worse and require action. The problem representation and diagnosis processes are linked to forecasting, which usually requires mental simulation. The next function is directed at generating a new course of action, in many cases, a straightforward process. We recognize what to do and do it. At other times, we don't recognize what to do and must rely on leverage points in order to construct a new course of action. If we blindly press forward trying to reach goals and remove barriers, we may miss these leverage points. So he's talking about looking back and evaluating your progress. He's talking about doing like a sit rep, or like just like checking in on your goals and your process and where you are and how can I reach my goal better? Am I doing this correctly? Did I miss anything? Is there any new data? So he's talking about stopping and reflecting. And Keith Stanovich talks about this a lot. That chapter 5 that we read from this book has a lot to do with that. The Rationality and the Reflective Mind by Keith Stanovich ties into this really well, and how we definitely need to reflect more if we want to be better goal setters and problem solvers. Experience lets us detect these leverage points better and provides a chance to improvise in order to take advantage of them. We also have to be careful not to pursue opportunities too enthusiastically, since they might distract us from our more important goals. So don't get too invested in any one plan, because you might have to change it. We have to balance between looking for ways to reach goals and looking for opportunities that will reshape the goals. So yeah, you actually have two goals at all times. You have your goal, which is the primary objective. You're like trying to reach some goal that you set, but you have other sub goals, which are to restructure your plan and re-strategize when you see fit. And you kind of have to like constantly reevaluate and reflect to see if that goal is more important than your primary objective. So it's this prioritization that goes on. That's probably all system 2. None of that is probably instinctual. So that's something that you have to do manually. You have to like take over from autopilot and, pause and start thinking. You have to like hit the books or something, go do some research and make sure that you're on the right track. The fourth function is to evaluate plans and actions, to play out a scenario to see what will happen. If the evaluation is favorable, we carry out the action. We also can learn from the evaluation, perhaps discovering new gaps or opportunities, resulting in problem detection or in a new way to represent the problem, as when we would modify our goals. The concept of problem solving appears incomplete without the aspect of discovering opportunities. There is an infinite set of instances in which problem solving should be initiated. We don't have all the money we want or all the vacation time. We are not driving cars that are as luxurious or sporty as we want, and so forth. So the potential for problem solving exists on a massive level. Yet we are not defining each of these as problems and wasting time worrying about these discrepancies. De Groot in 1945 and Eisenberg in 1984 have suggested that what triggers active problem solving is the ability to recognize when a goal is reachable. So if something is within reach, if you see something that you can grasp, if it feels like you could achieve something, that's when you start problem solving. That's when the gears start, moving, and you're like, wow, I can make a plan. I can actually reach this. So if something is outside of your reach, if something seems unattainable, you probably just ignore it. You probably say, that's impossible. I'm not even going to try. So maybe part of the process of coming up with a goal or a strategy is to start thinking about it from the perspective of, this is possible. How can I make this possible? How can I make something like this a possibility? How can I make this a reality? How can this happen in my lifetime, or for me, someone in my position, someone with my means, my you can think about this all the time from the perspective of like a uh, a staffer, like a political staffer. These guys are out there. They're trying to get policy passed and set up these appointments and meetings, and they're trying to get the right bills passed and the right laws written, because it's not the politicians that are usually writing all this stuff. It's usually staffers, and maybe something's impossible until you meet the right person, or maybe this would never pass with the politician that you're with without some meeting where their mind is changed, their perspective is changed, or they're willing to make a concession because this person's going to give them some kind of kickback. And we all know politics is supposed to be like this squeaky clean process where we follow the Constitution to a T, and everybody has their little pocket Constitution at all times, handily ready, and you can just pop it open and figure out what to do at any moment. I mean, like in a vacuum, that'd be really nice. Like in the perfect world, sure, but in the real world, you have to do certain things to get what you want. That's where morals come into play, and there's gray areas, but a lot of times it's just pretty obvious that to get what you want, you have to do things for other people, and to get what you want, um, maybe what you want is impossible without making someone else happy first, or they always talk about it like quid pro quo, and they make it some dirty thing, but that happens all the time. Everyone has interests in politics. Everyone has their own goals in politics, and sometimes to achieve your own goals, you have to help someone else achieve their goals first, to make your goals possible, to realize your reality, to make your effect on the world, to change the world in your way. To get what you want, you have to help someone else. So it is paradoxical. It is like something that seems like, well, if it's impossible, why would I even try? But it's like, maybe part of the problem solving process is making it possible, seeing the possibilities where there are none. In the standard view, this seems paradoxical, since it claims that a course of action that is generated after a goal is defined is evaluated for plausibility and used to determine whether to pursue that goal in the first place. Yeah, it's like bootstrapping. It's like, to solve a problem, first you have to see if the problem is solvable. So like, how does that even make sense? But that's what we're doing all the time based on previous experiences. We don't start every problem solving process with no context. We bring in everything that we've ever learned and seen and experienced and observed and evaluated to the table every single time, and it's done subconsciously most of the time. Of course, you can evaluate it with analytical means. You can sit there with the spreadsheet, but most of the time it's done instinctually. But that's what that's we're human. We have to use the tools that we have at our disposal, and one of them is instinct, and that's based on experience. So why not leverage that? Why not go get more experiences so that you can solve problems better, so that you can see if problems are even solvable in the first place without having to sit down with a pen and paper and work it out by hand, while someone else is doing it faster than you because they've seen more things. They've seen all the different situations that you haven't. because you're scrolling TikTok and they're out there, playing the politics game. They're out there shaking hands and kissing babies, and you're here scrolling TikTok. Maybe they're getting more experience than you. Maybe they're out there in the fields and they've seen things that you would never believe. They've seen things that, like that sounded Blade Runner-ish, but they're out there making plans that you could never even fathom as being a possibility, and it makes it look obvious in retrospect. Like you look at it and you're like, wow, I wish I thought of that. That looks so easy, but they had to experience all these different things that are probably not pleasurable. These are probably like things that took a lot of effort or were very grueling or costed a lot of money, or like going through school is just gaining experiences. Even if you take the liberal perspective, like that's the idea about school, you're just like gaining experience. Forget about a classical education, you're just gaining experience. That's what you're doing. So maybe you just take it at that face value. You're like, I just need more experience. I just need to go get I need to observe as many things as possible. That is the inductive method. That is induction. Observe and then analyze, and then hypothesize, and then create a plan, and then go act on the world, and then go collect more data and repeat the whole process. So that's how you bootstrap problem solving. That's how you detect problems in the first place, is by gaining experience with other problems. Experience lets us recognize the existence of opportunities. When the opportunity is recognized, the problem solver working out its implications is looking for a way to make good use of it, trying to shape it into a reasonable goal. At the same time, the opportunity is shaping the goal by raising the level of aspiration and identifying additional goal properties. Excuse me. Example 9.1 shows us how an organization shifted its goals because of the way it evaluated a business plan. In evaluating a course of action, officers of a company discovered an opportunity and leverage point. This information caused them to revise the goal and led to the synthesis of an expanded course of action. Example 9.1, learning to love telemarketing. The parent company organizes franchises for services. Each of the individual franchisees needs to use telemarketing to obtain customers, and each finds the task of hiring, training, and managing telemarketers to be burdensome. The marketing director for the parent company identifies this as a problem, but with an obvious solution. The parent company can centralize the telemarketing across the United States. The president of the parent company is lukewarm to this idea since it requires a large investment. Then, he realizes that with a centralized group of telemarketers, he can pursue his ideas about direct order sales. At that point, he becomes even more enthusiastic about the project than the marketing director himself. So this is sort of like what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes to realize your own goals, you have to help someone else first. You have to, realize their goals. So the marketing director, he wanted, the telemarketers to be better, to be able to probably like cross train and work between different franchises, or to have a better centralized team of telemarketers. And the boss is like, well, that's going to cost a lot of money. But then he realizes, well, then I can just, use their data. It's all at my disposal, and it's all centralized. I can see exactly what franchise is being sold what and by who, and which telemarketers are doing the best job and which franchises are doing the best at sales over the phone. So it's a win-win, but sometimes you have to investigate if it's worth it to go with someone else's plan, to see if you should help them with their plan rather than go with your own first. So networking seems to be an important part of problem solving here as well. What's it called? What were they saying this guy is? I just want to make sure. Yeah, the president of the parent company. Sometimes, like if he was on his own, if he didn't have a marketing director, he wouldn't have come up with that plan himself, likely. So the fact that he opened up that position for the marketing director in the first place allowed him to come up with a plan that made his job better, or made his job easier, or made him more effective. So it's all about teamwork. It's all about networking, communicating, and working with other people. So conflict resolution seems to be coming up. That might potentially come up in this, not this chapter, but maybe a future one. As the marketing director and the president mentally simulated the proposed telemarketing center, the president noticed a new and different possibility. This idea, to use telemarketers for catalog sales, increased the president's level of aspiration and changed the nature of the goal he wanted to pursue. The opportunity to use the telemarketers for direct order sales also suggested some fragmentary action sequences that could be easily blended with the original goal of helping the franchisees. Traditional models of problem solving. To get a better appreciation of the concept of leverage points and how they fit into a nonlinear account of problem solving, it is useful to contrast them to some more traditional models. Problem solving is a different phenomenon when we engage in it in natural settings from when we study it under laboratory conditions. We all know this. Like, I know it, he's going to explain it, but we all know that learning about something and problem solving in the field is much different than doing that in school or in training. It's that's why they have clinics for, I guess, physicians and doctors and stuff like that. Like, you have to go into the field to get experience first. And you just have to go problem solve in the field, or at least watch and observe someone else problem solve in the field first to get an idea of what it's like. You got to get into the simulator. Aspects of everyday cognition, such as problem finding, are usually not studied in the laboratory. We don't investigate problem finding skills in studies where we present subjects with a problem or a puzzle that is ready-made. Certainly, experimenters must restrict a phenomenon in order to study it. We run into trouble when we do not realize what our studies have been excluding. Traditional approaches to problem solving treat the process as open to decomposition into component elements that are relatively independent of one another. Traditional approaches also view the process of problem solving as proceeding in a mechanistic, that's the word I was looking for, mechanistic fashion from one stage to the next, using a set of operators as transformation rules. I'll say one of the hardest things to do when you're doing these spaces live is to figure out how to pronounce a word when you're like reading half of it and the next half is like broken up on the other page or into another paragraph, or like it's got the hyphen, it's broken onto the next line. It is so hard. You know the word, but it's like you're pronouncing it wrong. Your brain wants to read it wrong. It's so annoying. I don't know how audiobook guys do this. They must do like 100 takes. They must do 1,000 takes to get this right. So definitely a skill you can get better at, though. I've definitely gotten better at reading these things. I recommend trying reading out loud from a PDF that's been formatted by what's Caliber? Caliber is the app I use to take EPUBs and turn them into PDFs and vice versa. Because the PDFs are actually pretty clean, and they look pretty good on my Kindle. But sometimes, every once in a while, there's a word that's just totally effed up. I feel like I don't even know if I'm reading English sometimes. First, we will examine the approach. Oh, we got a request from Boren. All right. Come on up, man. You are free to speak. What's on your mind? What's going on, Boren? Can you hear me? Okay, now he's up here. Boren, you're free to speak. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I can. I froze up for a second there when it was like
Yeah,
processing
that
the
happened to
request.
me all the time.
Yeah, I kind of waited till there was a lull and you were not directly reading, but yeah, like the point about changing goals as you get more information. It's a very very important point, because like a lot of people think that there's like this nobility in just like, setting a certain list of goals and just doggedly going after these things until you die or whatever, where like maybe that's not like the wisest thing. Maybe like the goals you set when you're 17, 18, 19, and the goals you set when you're 25 and the goals you set when you're 35 are going to be different things based on your level of wisdom and experience and like knowledge about what's possible and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the people who just, I feel like it's a lot of like Asian parents. I see this a lot. I see this so often. Asian parents will like set these kids up and they're like, "You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a physician. You're going to be a dentist. You're going to be a lawyer." And like the kid burns out when they're like 22. They're like on their last year of college, and they are like they're like they have the gun in their mouth, man. They're like totally disillusioned with life. They haven't they also see like the media around them where it's like you're going to find love at college. You're going to find your one here at college. And it's like they're in an engineering degree where there's no women, and they're like they're so disillusioned. They're like ready. They're burned out. They know they're never gonna get married now. Their life's over. Dude, these kids are like totally effed up, and it's all because their goals have not changed since like they were 17 or like 16 in their junior year of high school when they took the PSATs. It's like, man, you should have been thinking about this, like this stuff that you wanted back in high school. You should have been talking to your advisors, not your parents. Your parents are like first generation immigrants who don't know anything about America or like what it's like to live in the world. And they're forcing you down this crazy path, like the old American dream of like just go be a doctor, just go be a doctor, and life is really cool when you can drive around in your Mercedes Benz and you're a doctor, and it's so unrealistic. They just have this crazy view of the world. They have these crazy goals, and they're totally unrealistic. And yeah, it's so sad to see these people get crushed, even if they're you can talk about it from the perspective of like, yeah, these are humans. They're not Americans. Trust me. I don't think they're Americans. These guys are like first generation immigrants. These parents are fresh off the boat. They don't even speak English. But you feel bad for the kids. They're totally like at the parents' whim. They've been sold this idea, this goal that's totally unrealistic, and they hit their 30s and they're just done with life. They're checked out. They're just ready to quit. So yeah, you gotta think for yourself sometimes. You gotta reevaluate. You gotta come up with new goals, and you should be doing that as early as possible. One of the things I think that you should be doing is talking to people with experience as soon as possible. If you're interested in something, if you have an interest in photography or videography or whatever, go talk to a videographer. Go find someone who's an expert and make it your goal to just talk to this person as much as possible, to learn from them, to study under them, do whatever you have to do to just see if that's what you want, and evaluate your goal and then like reappraise it. You don't always have to be this guy that's like, I'm going to be a videographer because I wanted to do that ever since I was a kid. That's not everybody. So yeah, the reappraisal and reevaluation super important. Don't get stuck in your ways.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, just to elaborate on that, like you don't have to find some formal mentor necessarily in a particular field or anything like that. I mean, even just hanging out with people that do a certain job or in a certain profession, have accomplished certain things, like hanging out with them, going to dinner with them, going to their house, whatever, seeing how they live and what their personalities like that allowed them to accomplish that, or what their habits are like that allowed them to accomplish that, and like deciding like, A, am I capable of doing that? B, is that really what I want, or do I want something different? Like right, because maybe one guy he really covets the fact that the doctor has a high standard of living or whatever. Another guy is totally turned off by the hours or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's like you're not really going to know that in a vacuum.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you were to just go on LinkedIn or whatever and like top 100 careers for first generation immigrants, blah blah blah. Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of like gobbledygook on there that's gonna like fill your head with crap. It's like you could probably be better served by going and hanging out with people that you think are cool. Even when you're like 17, like go hang out with someone you think is cool who's successful. Go hang out with someone you know who's like the singer of a band, or go hang out with the guy who's like a scratch golfer. Go talk to the guy whose dad was like an airplane pilot or something. Just do anything around successful, experienced people, and it'll like shape your goals. The whole point of this chapter is to tell you that your goals are shaped by your experience, and you can get experience from other people. You don't have to go do the thing yourself. You can just like tell stories to each other, and that can inform your goals, and that can change your perception, and that can change your goals by changing your perception. It's like a feedback loop. So yeah, super important point. And I'll give an anecdotal example real quick. My dad was terrible at golf until like 3 4 years ago. He was like he never wanted to go out golfing because he just was like he was never very good at it. So like he felt like he was like keeping the other guys behind, or like slowing them down, or it's these guys they're out there and they're like champing it. They're getting bogeys and birdies, and he's like three up on the on the par. So it's like it's rough. And then he uh he lost his job, so he moved into this what do you call it, the in-law suite of his like buddy's house. And this guy's a scratch golfer. This guy literally was like one of the top golfers in my home state, New Jersey. And he plays in a lot of professional courses. He's flown everywhere. He's played a lot of different courses. He knows everything about golf and all the players. And just by like osmosis, just by my dad living with this guy, he shoots under 100 now, which is like it's not totally remarkable that he can shoot under 100, but it's remarkable for him because he could never do that. And it was a goal that he didn't know he really had, but now he could like easily drive towards it. And it shaped his whole life, because now he can hang out with the guys at work, like the CEOs, the C-suite executives. He can hang out with these guys and go golf with them at all the nice courses, and you start to see the upper crust of society more, and you're like rubbing elbows, and you're fraternizing with these people. You get to know it better, and you get to shape your goals around a distinctive lifestyle. You get to hit that social circle where it's like, oh, these guys, they just go golfing every month in a different country. So you wouldn't have those goals normally. No one just like wakes up and is like, yeah, I think I want to shoot under 80 on golf today. So sometimes you just have to go talk to experts, go talk to somebody who's a professional, and go hang out with them and go figure out what they're all about and see if that's the life for you. But yeah, if you have anything else to say, Baran, you can just jump in whenever you want. I'll pause reading. Don't feel like you're interrupting. So I'm going to continue if you don't have anything to bounce off that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, yeah, just I could give personal anecdotes of like things that I thought maybe would be cool, and then I ruled out. But yeah, the short story version is yeah, just meet and talk to people that do different things instead of just sort of trying to learn about it in the abstract. That's just very practical life wisdom.
Yes, be practical, be pragmatic. Uh, Life isn't a laboratory. Life isn't a simulation. As much as Elon Musk will tell you it is. You got to get out there. You got to go get 10 toes on concrete. You got to go talk to people. Pickup artists, they do this thing where they chat online about, well, what if I did this, and if I talk about this with this kind of girl, blah blah blah. Just go out there and talk to women, man. Just stop being a weirdo. Stop treating it like it's a freaking petri dish. Life is full of meaning and full of people that you get to talk to. You're put in a certain place in a certain time for a reason. So go experience life and go figure out what your goals are, and go figure out what your purpose is. You don't have to just read textbooks all day.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, a lot of courtrooms are open to the public. Like, if you want to be a lawyer, ask your practicing lawyer buddy, when do you have court dates? Like, can I just show up and watch? you know, and like you can do these sorts of things. Like, this is like an open sandbox. Like the world, yeah, like you're saying, it's not just a simulation. Like, you can kind of take the bull by the horns and go see, like, well, how things really feel. A lot of it's how does this career, how does this way of life make me feel when I'm actually doing it, not just like in an abstract when I'm thinking about it. Because a lot of the times the way we imagine things are going to pan out and the reality is very different. So go and as close as you can get, as close as you can possibly get to living a day in the life of a different person. Take advantage of that.
Yes. Have have someone that you can kind of step into their life just to see if their goals are something that you would want to have for yourself. So maybe you don't have to sit there and think about all the different goals that you want all the time. Maybe you can just, go the easy route and go piggyback off of someone's success and go learn a little bit from them. So maybe life doesn't have to be so hard. Maybe you can kind of think of it as a way to jumpstart your career or jumpstart.
Yeah, yeah. Just as an example, I kind of handicapped myself by not doing that in my current profession when I had opportunities, earlier in life that, there was guys that would have taken me under their wing if I had even just thought of this.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's
I'm
it's totally an
succeeding at what I'm
opportunity.
doing, but or they would have just for free imparted all this knowledge and stuff if I'd simply asked. And it's just kind of like a mental block, like, well, I've got to pull myself up by my bootstraps and learn it all myself and grind it out in the trenches, when really, like, a lot of these guys, if they're 60, 65, 70, or they're on the verge of retiring, like, they don't view you as competition. They're just going to tell you everything.
Yeah, they want to tell their stories. They want to have they want to be a mentor. There's a lot of these guys that just want to hand down the knowledge because they know their kids are like I see it all the time. I see 60-year-old dudes and their kids are just total like like losers. I'll just say it. They're just totally dejects. They have done nothing in life. And they can't pass this down to their kids. Their kids don't give a shit. They've squandered all the inheritance, the generational wealth of knowledge and experience. It's just totally pissed on. And those old guys, they want to take someone on who they can tell this all to. So why not just go, you don't have to ask. There's so many times life just hands you an opportunity and you don't have to ask permission. You can just go take it. It's there for you. It's like it was handed to you. It was placed there for you. So don't be afraid to just go goal seek a little bit. Just go make life your bitch sometimes. Sometimes you just got to go do what you got to do to be who you are, to become who you are. But but yeah, anyways, let's get back to the book.
Yeah. So the summary would be: if you want to succeed in a certain field, get as close to the most successful people in that field as you can. Not even necessarily for networking, if for no other reason, just to do observational learning.
Yes. Yes, go observe. That's what a true inductivist would do. Just observe. If for no other reason, that's if your goal is to succeed, first observe. Okay. But yeah, if anybody else has anything to add, feel free to request. I'll bring you up. But we'll get back to the book. I feel like there's more here. I hope there's another example because the examples are always what elicit things for me here. So we're talking about problem solving and nonlinear problem solving in contrast to traditional approaches of problem solving. So traditional approaches also view the process of problem solving as proceeding in a mechanistic fashion from one stage to the next, using a set of operators as transformation rules. First, we will examine the approach that relies on stage models, the most common treatment of problem solving. After that, we will look at the artificial intelligence approach, the most sophisticated treatment. Stage models. Stage models are the most common description of problem-solving activities. Ranan Lipschitz, and that's a really nice name, Raanan Lipschitz, and Orna Bar Ilan, ORNABAR-ILAN, in 1996, had found examples of researchers and theoreticians, there we go, theoreticians who have presented various models. Two-stage models, idea getting and idea evaluation, and three-stage models, problem finding, design of alternatives, and choice. Now, I just want to point out that Gary Klein's model of problem solving is a four-stage model, but it's kind of like interconnected. So it's not like those four stages happen and then it's done. It's like it's recursive and kind of it happens and can be stopped and started at any point. There's four-stage models in traditional problem solving: understanding the problem, devising a plan, carrying out the plan, and evaluating the results. There's five-stage models, there's six-stage models, there's seven-stage models, there's an eight-stage model. I'm not going to go through all these because it would just be, rote, just me reading these out. But so in contrast to his nonlinear problem-solving method. So let's see. Okay. We can run into trouble with these models by following the linear sequence of steps too strictly. For example, you would not want to start generating courses of action until you had a fairly good idea of what the problem was. However, for many common problems, we will not be able to reach a good definition because they are ill-defined goals. We cannot begin with a definition since there is none. Think about a fireground commander racing to put out a fire. The goal seems well defined. Extinguish the fire so it does not start again. However, as we saw in Chapter 2, the commander has to judge whether to attack the fire or begin search and rescue or do both. If the building is deserted and in poor shape, the commander may choose to let it burn rather than use resources to prevent its spread. Commanders are judged by whether they choose the right action in a situation, and sometimes their superiors and peers will disagree about what the right thing to do was. The criterion for claiming that a goal is ill-defined is that experienced people might not agree about how to satisfy that goal. Writing a good story has an ill-defined goal. Different English teachers could disagree in their judgments of whether a specific story satisfies the goal of being good. Solving a university's parking problem is ill-defined. Experts are certain to disagree about what a good outcome is. One person might favor building large parking structures in the middle of campus to preserve space. Another would put all the parking at the edges of the campus and serve commuters with a bus system to make the campus car-free. Architects will have trouble agreeing on acceptable designs, in part because of the disagreement over goals. In contrast, a mathematical equation is an example of a problem with a well-defined goal. No one would disagree with the answer x equals 5 for the equation x plus 7 equals 12, or with the intent of the problem in the first place. For many people, solving well-defined puzzles is satisfying because there is always a right answer. There is pleasure in making the different strands tumble into place. That's a weird sentence. Most natural goals seem to be ill-defined. So that's something you should keep in mind. Most natural goals seem to be ill-defined. And I would say that mathematics is not usually natural. That's something that's totally constructed. People say that there's math in nature, but I think that's something that's abstract and it's not something instinctive. So, and instinct is natural. It's not always the best. It's not always good, but most natural goals seeming to be ill-defined, that kind of tracks. And it kind of puts that contrast between the natural world and the mathematical. And I don't think we think of those two things as being the same in any natural case. I think it's like it's popular science that has said, math is beautiful, math is in nature. Here's all the cases where you can find math in nature. And I think it's something that's also constructed. That's like not a natural reaction. I don't think people go out there and just say, "Wow, looks like this is so natural that math must have designed it," or something like that. That's just I don't think that's what people think naturally. So keep that in mind. Natural goals seem to be ill-defined. Some are ill-defined to a minor extent, like firefighting. Some are more strongly ill-defined, like solving a parking problem. Some are extremely ill-defined, like writing a good short story. Most of the studies of problem solving and decision making have centered on well-defined well-defined goals, solving mathematical equations, physics problems, or syllogisms in deductive logic, for example. The appeal of these well-defined problems is that researchers can perform carefully designed experiments manipulating different variables to see if the manipulations change the proportion of correct answers. Because all of the problems have correct answers, there is no ambiguity in these studies. Therefore, the field of problem solving has concentrated on tasks with well-defined goals. Because it is so systematic, we are attracted to the standard advice of following the stages from problem definition to option generation and evaluation. Yet, in dealing with an ill-defined goal, this advice is sure to fail. The first step, define the goal, can never be completed if the goal is ill-defined, and that means the problem solver is not supposed to go further. Instead, the problem solver is trapped at that first step. The standard method for solving problems is worse than useless. It can interfere when people try to solve ill-defined problems, and this was observed by Klein and Weizenfeld in 1978. Weizenfeld is Weitzzenfeld. Consider the following quotation. What do you want to do with your life? Where do you want to be in 5 years, 10, or even 20? What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? All of these questions need to be answered before you start pursuing a career focus, and even before you decide on an education. This advice came from a pamphlet designed for high school students, Federal Jobs for College Graduates. I wonder how many readers with advanced degrees could answer the questions. Yeah, I don't think many people can answer the questions. I don't think many people have answers for themselves, let alone other people. So sometimes you just got to go make your way in life. Sometimes you just got to go talk to the experts. Problems can be unstructured in several ways, not just through vague goals. According to Reitman in 1965, and Reitman is Reitman, a problem can be ill-structured if the initial state is not defined, the terminal state is undefined, or the procedure for transforming the initial state into the terminal state is undefined. For some problems, clarifying the initial state is the most important outcome. For example, diagnosing the disease causing a mysterious set of symptoms will usually enable a physician to determine the appropriate course of action. For other problems, such as rescuing people from a burning building, the diagnosis of how they got into the building is irrelevant. Next, let us consider the case in which the terminal state is ill-defined. For some problems, clarifying the terminal state is critical. For example, a teenager searching for a job may not have a clear idea of the essential characteristics of a good job. For other problems, such as trying to cut the crime rate by half in a large city, the goal is well defined, and what is needed is to diagnose the prime causes of crime. Whether it's unemployment, lenient judges, inconsistencies in legal codes, and so forth. And to find procedures for eliminating those causes. So it's kind of like working backwards. Finally, the transformation of initial into terminal state may be critical, as in constructing a complicated plan, or it may be trivial. as in the case of a physician who knows just what to do once an accurate diagnosis is made. Therefore, the focus of problem solving can be very different depending on the nature of the problem. And that's why we're talking about nonlinear problem solving. These other models for problem solving, the traditional models, just completely break down as soon as the goals are not defined. The four-stage model is incomplete and misleading. It does not tell us much that is useful about defining goals or how to generate courses of action. It merely states that these steps must be taken. It can include stages such as diagnosis that may be irrelevant for certain types of problems. It misleads by implying that the steps should follow a linear sequence. Most behavioral scientists studying problem solving now agree about the shortcomings of stage models. The components of a stage model the components of a stage model are themselves reasonable. The difficulty is not in the components of the stage models, but in the assumption of linearity. The account in Figure 8.1 relies on similar components, but organizes them to make them more applicable to ill-structured problems. This is going to be probably my favorite part of the chapter, the artificial intelligence approach. Artificial intelligence researchers try to use computers to perform complex judgment and reasoning tasks. In the 1950s, Herbert Simon and others realized that computers could be used to manipulate symbols as well as numbers. By coding knowledge as symbols, Simon and his colleagues were able to make computers learn, draw inferences, and solve problems. In doing so, he made the study of thinking a respectable scientific endeavor. The proof of success in programming a computer to copy the thinking of human subjects could be tested by comparing the computer's performance with those of the human subjects it was supposed to imitate. Previously, psychologists in the United States had rejected the study of thinking as too unscientific. The dominant research paradigm was to study the learning behavior of lower organisms, such as rats and pigeons. So these are like the behavioralists. Simon and his colleagues helped to change all of that. In 1972, Alan Newell and Herbert Simon published Human Problem Solving, describing their success in writing computer programs that could emulate human thought processes for tasks such as chess and puzzles. Example 9.2 shows a cryptarithmetic task that they used in their research. Example 9.2. So this is just me reading out what I see. Donald plus Gerald equals Robert. The cryptarithmetic task is to solve a problem. Donald plus Gerald equals Robert, with only the clue that D equals 5. Each letter corresponds to a different number, and the task is to figure out the numerical value of each letter. So starting with the fact that D equals 5, we can figure out that T is 0. Also in the far left column, we see that D, 5 plus G is at least 6 and at most 9, blah, blah, blah. So he's going to go through the rote arithmetic there. The idea is that like there's some kind of cryptographic sequence where like letters encode values and we can solve it like an equation. Whatever. The field of artificial intelligence has resulted in a number of important findings and applications, but has not had the full impact that its original developers expected. I think now it has. I think now that we're in the age of AI, I think now we see the potential for the nonlinear problem-solving skills that are being talked about, and specifically in object detection, I think in speech recognition, I think in language synthesis, like speech synthesis, text synthesis. I think a lot of generation, I think a lot of content generation comes from AI, like artificial intelligence models. Just because it's so fuzzy, it's like it's the opposite of. So what we were talking about earlier in the chapter is like the this nonlinear problem solving model in comparison to the linear ones, and how the linear ones fall short. And how they fall short is that they are not fuzzy. They're completely, what would you call it, rigid, or linear. They can't change. They're very. It's the opposite of the artificial intelligence, which is stochastic, and it's nonlinear, and it can fit a variety of different patterns and sequences and inputs, and it has a variety of outputs, and it's like totally arbitrary what the inputs are, and the outputs just they're there. They always appear. There's no like it's completely continuous. There are no outputs that cannot be solved for. So that this is like he's just telling you that the he's showing you by example that artificial intelligence is like the opposite of linear problem solving. It's this thing that is it has like the feedback loop effect that our nonlinear problem solving has, where the goals define the perception and the perception defines the goals. And it's this feedback loop that kind of changes things, and you can stop or start the process of problem solving anywhere at any point. That's a lot like AI. You can train it to whatever point you want, and then you can stop training it and then figure out like what parameters do I need to tweak, and then either continue training or just do your inference from there, or start with a new model completely. It's a lot like this. So it's not as useful as Mark Andreessen paints the picture to be. AI is not going to take everybody's job, but it is going to make cars drivable by themselves. Self-driving cars are now a reality that we have to contend with, and it's not something that's going to go away, not anytime soon, anyways. So these are real problems being solved by real artificial intelligence models. So what that has to say about the world is that there's probably a lot of nonlinear problems to be solved. There's a lot of problems that need the help of nonlinear problem solving. So this may help us with this chapter. So I want to see what he has to say. I don't want to keep rambling. The focus on well-defined problems is not the only limitation of the artificial intelligence approach. Although it claims to be describing how people solve problems, the approach is limited to the processes at which digital computers excel, such as setting up and searching through lists. Now we are in a position to see what is missing from the artificial intelligence approach to problem solving. Here are some of the basic claims of the artificial intelligence approach. The problem is represented as a closed problem space generated from a finite set of objects, relations, and properties. Problem solving is the search through the problem space until the desired knowledge state is reached. The search can be heuristic. Reformulating a goal means removing unnecessary constraints. So those are the properties of machine learning or artificial intelligence approaches to problem solving. Artificial intelligence programs establish a problem space consisting of all the descriptions and implications of the objects, their properties, and their relationships. The job of the program is to discover at least one pathway that will work to connect the initial and the desired end state. The program can conduct a heuristic search so that it does not have to examine every alternative. For example, if the problem hits a gap, that is a difference between where it is and where it needs to be, then it can make the reducing of this gap a sub-goal and focus its search on ways of reducing that difference. This is termed a means-ends analysis, the strategy of identifying a barrier to reaching an end state, making the new goal to overcome that barrier, and so on. So that's like the stochastic approach. And that's what backpropagation is. If you study machine learning or neural networks or anything like that at all, one of the things you'll encounter is backpropagation as this process where what you do is you evaluate your neural net based on some error function, and the error function will return the error of some node in the network. And what you can do is you can propagate that error backwards to the input nodes and kind of weigh them differently. You can change the weight of each input based on that error. And it's a lot of calculus. It's a lot of derivatives based on the activation function of your neural network. But backpropagation is this like mathematical process of like eliminating errors, and it's eliminating the error at one node at a time. So that's kind of the idea. It's like this means end analysis, identifying a barrier to reaching an end state per node and making that the new goal. And but the overarching goal is to compute something, to create a network that is at the, what would you call it, like the lowest entropy for solving some task. It requires the least amount of energy to solve some task, or sorry, highest entropy. Anyways, the artificial intelligence community can point to many impressive accomplishments, but we have to be wary of its claims. In fact, each of the individual claims runs into trouble, and the entire approach rests on questionable assumptions. Yeah, don't let Mark Andreessen read this. He'll have a fit. His cone head might explode. First, the idea of a problem space does not match anything we know of experience about human problem solving. I do not know of any evidence that shows that people generate problem spaces, except in combinatorial, well-defined problems, such as figuring out the probability of getting 3 heads if you throw 4 coins simultaneously. If you did not know the formula to use, you might just write out all the permutations and count up the frequencies. For situations that are more complex or less precise, we would usually not try to lay out the problem space of objects, relations, and properties. Second, the idea of searching through a problem space misses the experience we have of noticing things we had not considered before and discovering or synthesizing a new approach. If we have already set up the problem space, we are unlikely to make these discoveries as we work on the task. Third, there are other strategies in addition to the means-ends analysis. Using means-ends analysis to reduce differences is not the same as noticing opportunities. When we solve problems, we are alert to opportunities that let us make progress, even if those opportunities do not correspond to the obstacles we are trying to eliminate. And this is what I keep telling everybody. This is why machine learning and artificial intelligence is limited right now. It is capped. There is a hard limit on how it can learn, and it does not learn the same way we do. It does not represent and when I say represent, it does not perceive opportunities. It doesn't know if it's about to, solve the problem. It's not self-aware. It is not. And a lot of people say like AI is self-aware, AI has self-consciousness, blah blah blah. That's just not. It's simply not true. It does not represent opportunities. It only represents errors. And what he's talking about here is the means-end analysis. That's all it can do. All it can do is represent an error, and if it's going to be closer or further away from that error. That is the best AI can do at this point. We don't have better algorithms for representing an opportunity versus an error. It doesn't even exist to an AI model. LLMs do not do that. All they do is represent errors, not opportunities. It just doesn't exist. I can't stress that enough. If anyone tells you that AI has like reached the singularity, or it's like self-aware, or if we've reached AGI, they're retarded, man. It's just not true. We don't have that yet. That's just not part of it's not part of any model. Nobody has discovered a way to do that yet. I don't think it exists. In addition, Green, Post, and Penner, VOSSGREENE, POST, and PENNER, in 1983 studied ill-structured social science problems and found little evidence for straightforward means-end analysis. Fourth, in solving problems, we do not reformulate goals merely by removing constraints. We sometimes make radical shifts. Think again about the car rescue in example 5.1. The commander of the rescue team was not eliminating unnecessary constraints as much as he was changing the nature of the goal. This is also something that LLMs cannot do on their own. They cannot, reorient their goals. They can't train towards something on their own. As much as people will say that it's like unsupervised training, it's not changing the goal. It's just changing how the data is weighted. So, and what I mean by that is we were talking about this at the beginning of the chapter. Your goals define your perception, and your perceptions define your goals. That is the human condition. That is how we see problems and perceive the world. LLMs do not perceive the world the same way we do. It's very limited, and they have a goal set by us. When it's unsupervised learning, you'll hear that term, I'm sure, now that I've said it. It doesn't mean that it's totally unsupervised, and it does not mean that the AI is setting its own goals. That's like science fiction. That's not real. So the commander of the rescue team was not eliminating unnecessary constraints as much as he was changing the nature of the goal, lifting the victim through the roof instead of getting him out of one of the doors. That's a human. That is an example of a purely human thing. That is like quintessentially human, just changing our goals. We have the ability to do that. The artificial intelligence program is not a technique for generating options. Instead, it is a procedure for setting up a search space and then using heuristics to achieve more efficient efficient searches to find a good option. Yeah, so you have to all it does is let you put some parameters into like a pool, and it lets you find good options. It does not let you define a goal, or it doesn't make the options appear. You just have to have it's almost like it's useless without a goal, in other words. So it does not exist on its own. It must be used in conjunction with other ways of thinking or problem solving. Conducting rapid searches is what digital computers do best. A computer does not have to do anything constructive to search through a space. It does not have to generate anything new. If the search space can be structured well enough, it can turn up findings that are novel. For example, if you give a computer 1,000 different ice cream flavors, 10 types of cones, and 500 toppings, it will identify a range of options no one ever considered before, which is true. That is definitely true. A lot of them are not going to be good. One of the primary mechanisms of artificial intelligence is to spread out the alternatives exhaustively and filter through them efficiently. This is the same strategy used in the analytical approaches to decision making. These approaches urge us to gather large numbers of options, generate large numbers of options in order to reasonably I'm getting really tired. I'm starting to read words wrong. In order to be reasonably sure that the set will include a good option. Then we are supposed to search through these options, filtering out the inadequate ones to find a successful one. Computational approaches try to reduce thinking to searching. Thus, they show their greatest successes with tasks that can be transformed into searches. To examine the ideas about problem solving represented in Figure 9.1 more critically, it may be useful to consider an incident that placed high demands on both problem solving and decision-making skills. The most interesting aspects of this incident were about detecting problems, representing the problems, and generating new courses of action. The Apollo 13 mission, a case study of problem solving. The incident in question is the explosion of an oxygen tank following the launch of the spacecraft and the difficulties of bringing the astronauts safely back to Earth. On the surface, it is a story about adventures in space, but at another level, it is about problem solving and decision making. Detecting problems, understanding the nature of the problems, improvising solutions, and selecting courses of action. Lovell and Kluger, Lovellkluger, in 1994, have described the Apollo 13 mission, particularly the time-pressured workarounds to unexpected failures under conditions of high uncertainty. I counted 73 problem-solving and decision-making episodes in the book. This type of retrospective review can be helpful in tying issues together. It can also be misleading, since the Apollo 13 mission is not representative of other types of problem-solving incidents, and because the recollections of astronaut Jim Lovell may be inaccurate regarding the processes used to solve the various problems. One thing that makes me suspicious is that no one in the book ever makes a stupid mistake. Perhaps Lovell is blessed with gifted colleagues. Perhaps he is a pure soul who is attuned to the good in people. Or perhaps his memoirs have been sanitized to reduce friction. Therefore, we need to be careful in accepting Lovell and Kluger's accounts as reality. But that should not stop us from seeing what we can learn from it. One easy thing to do is look for examples of the categories of Figure 9.1, problem detection, problem representation, generation of a course of action, and evaluation. So he's saying categories or examples of nonlinear problem solving. Problem detection was usually not important because the problem was clear-cut and expertise was not required to notice the problem. For example, the initial loss of oxygen triggered all kinds of alarms. It would have taken a dedicated effort not to notice that a problem had arisen. The instruments showing a loss of oxygen also pointed to an obvious, impending problem of keeping the astronauts alive. Other problem detections did require expertise. I estimated that problem detection played a key role in 20 of the 73 episodes. For example, using the Linear Excursion Module, the LEM, as a lifeboat created a problem of eliminating carbon dioxide, since the LEM was not equipped to handle 3 astronauts for extended periods of time. This difficulty could have been missed, with critical consequences. Problem representation was a primary process, playing a key role in 31 of the 73 episodes. In 13 of the episodes, the problem representation directly led to the strategy or plan adopted. By knowing what type of problem they were facing, the mission controllers recognized how to react. From the outset, the mission controllers needed to make sense of all of the unexpected instrument readings they were getting. They needed to get a big picture of what had suddenly happened to their spacecraft, so they're going to observe. They're going to collect all the data first. Once they built their situation awareness, the nature of the problem shifted from performing the planned mission to the new mission of finding a way to save the astronauts. Problem representation was central in making sense of all the sudden demands, keeping antennas aligned, preventing the spaceship from developing thermal imbalance because it was no longer rotating systematically to protect it from the direct exposure to the sun, adjusting to losses of power and oxygen, and so forth. There were about 5 instances of goal revision. The most dramatic was the shift in goals from trying to continue the mission while repairing the problem to calling the mission off and concentrating on returning the astronauts safely. In hindsight, this seems like an obvious shift. But the mission controllers and the astronauts resisted it. In industrial settings, such as running a manufacturing or production process, supervisors have trouble with this type of breakpoint, where they have to abandon business as usual and move to an emergency mode. Sometimes they wait too long to make this shift. The incident also required many sub-goals, such as figuring out how to reduce power soon after the accident, or devising a plan to power up the command module in 2 hours, rather than the full day, using thousands of amp hours that was typical. There were many examples of these, since each new challenge carried with it a new set of sub-goals. These are the basis for means-ends analysis, finding a difference and making it the new goal to pursue. This incident demanded a great deal of means-ends analysis in the sense of identifying new sub-goals. I did not see the type of goal shift we would find with ill-defined goals. The Apollo 13 mission may not have shown much goal revision because the goals were fairly well defined to begin with. Most of the changes in goals involved shifts in priorities, such as the uses of water. Water was needed by the cooling system to protect the equipment and also by the crew. Therefore, this may have been the wrong type of incident to study goal redefinition. Another possibility is that I am mistaken in my emphasis on goal redefinition. The Apollo 13 incident did not require as much diagnosis as I had expected. I found only 10 examples of diagnosis, plus another 2 after the mission was over, to find out why the explosion had occurred and to find out why the trajectory of the spacecraft was shifting during its return to Earth. For problems such as finding ways to eliminate the buildup of carbon dioxide, reduce electrical power consumption, and conserve water use, diagnosis was irrelevant. The problem representation was clear, and the mission controllers needed to find a novel course of action. This illustrates why the process of diagnosis is portrayed as optional in Figure 9.1. For these episodes where diagnosis was needed, it played a critical role. For example, during the return to Earth, Battery 2 started to falter. There were only 4 batteries available. If the spacecraft was to develop battery problems on top of all the other failures, the chances of success would go even lower and more workarounds would be needed. One of the mission controllers tried to diagnose the cause of the problem and determined that it was a low probability malfunction that had existed in all of the batteries of every LEM. The odds of other batteries failing were very low. In other words, the malfunction was not part of the unique crises affecting Apollo 13 or part of the other system failures. Based on this diagnosis, the mission controllers were able to ignore the problem with Battery 2 and proceed with their plans. The level of detail for carrying out the diagnosis is important. The astronauts and mission controllers would have liked to have a diagnosis of the cause of the original malfunction, which turned out to be an explosion of one of the 2 oxygen tanks. However, it was more important to find out the nature of the damage than to learn why it occurred. The mission controllers performed an initial diagnosis to learn what was causing the bizarre sensor readings. The diagnosis was that the spacecraft had lost one of its 2 oxygen tanks and was quickly losing the oxygen in the second tank. That explained the sensor readouts and provided a clear problem representation. They did not have a diagnosis of what caused the loss of oxygen tanks. Only at the end of the mission did the astronauts see the extent of the destruction to the oxygen tanks. And only after several months did the investigation team learn how the maintenance and design process had created the hazard in the first place, leading to a condition where an unshielded wire in the oxygen tank generated a spark after a routine action to turn on the fan to stir the contents of the oxygen tanks. Sorry, I'm like trying to speed through this. This level of diagnosis would have had no value during the emergency itself. Some of the most compelling episodes in this incident were about constructing new courses of action. These stood out because so much of the mission was designed to be carefully scripted, yet when the script had to be abandoned, the mission controllers showed themselves capable of wonderful improvisation. I counted 18 instances in which new courses of action were invented, along with many additional instances in which a course of action was recognized, but without a need to do anything inventive. For the cases where actions had to be constructed, the accounts did not have enough detail for me to judge the extent to which means-ends analyses and leverage points were used, or other strategies or combinations of strategies. Several episodes suggested means-ends analyses, such as when the controllers discovered that the re-entry battery was 20 amp hours below what was needed. The problem was a difference between what existed and what was needed. The controllers searched for a way to reduce this difference and found that the LEM had excess capacity, so the new course of action was to transfer LEM power up to the command module. Other episodes suggested the use of leverage points, and in many of the instances in which the new courses of action were generated, both means-ends analyses and leverage points appeared to be used. Dude, I feel like I'm getting bogged down in like the most boring part of the book. I feel like I could just go read the other book. I feel like I'm reading a book inside of a book. This is killing me. The means ends analyses identified new sub-goals, and the leverage points identified the promising starting points for constructing the courses of action. For example, the mission controllers needed a way to align the re-entry of the ship. The typical procedure was to use the horizon of the Earth as it moved across a window, sweeping past hash marks etched on the window for this purpose. However, Apollo 13 was returning from the nighttime side of Earth. The astronauts could not check their alignment against a horizon they could not see. One of the team leaders realized that the moon would be visible as it set against the Earth's horizon during the critical re-entry time. He planned a course of action to develop calculations about when the moon should disappear so the crew could determine if they had the correct entry mark. One of the most unexpected things I learned from reviewing the Apollo 13 episodes was the importance of forecasting. In my tally, 15 of the episodes require forecasting. In 4 of these, the forecasts resulted in a revised problem representation, and in another 3 episodes, the forecasting produced problem detection. Forecasting was needed to calculate when the spacecraft would run out of oxygen and water. The forecasts showed that the mission controllers could not retain the planned course because the oxygen would not last long enough. They would have to work out a new course. This surfaced a new problem to be solved. Forecasting also came into play at the end of the mission when the observed trajectory began to deviate from the expected trajectory, which meant that a new problem was detected. The mission controllers had to figure out whether the deviation was going to get worse, and if so, how to handle it. They weren't able to diagnose the cause of the deviation until after the mission. The mission controllers did perform evaluations of the different courses of action that were proposed to assure themselves that the various workarounds would succeed. Thus, in recommending a new procedure for changing the course of the crippled ship, the suggested action was studied in a simulator to verify that the action would work and that the timing parameters were accurate. The mission controllers were using actual simulations along with mental simulations to test the actions. Lord Almighty, how long does this go for? Dude. I'm looking through just to see how far this stupid chapter goes. Oh my gosh. Dude, it's still, I'm 4 more pages through, 5 more pages through, 6 more pages through, 7, 8. Wow, 9 more pages to go. I don't have it in me. I'm out of gas and it is 3 a.m. If anybody has any final thoughts, feel free to come up here. Hey, there's Barn, right on cue. Let me get you up here and I'll let you chit chat about how this is going. I'm just going to go back to where we were. Let's see. And put a bookmark because I'm not reading all this. This is crazy, man. All right, Barn, you're up here. What do you got for me?
The same thing happens to me sometimes. It's always a tough call whether or not to power through the chapter or to call it quits.
Yeah.
I usually default to, if I'm feeling that way, call it quits, because you might find some nugget in there when your brain is fresh that you'll have more to say
Yeah.
about.
Dude, I have nothing to say about it right now. I'm like totally just on autopilot. I feel like if I keep reading, it's just going to get worse. Like I'm definitely going to miss things. So yeah, I'm wrapping it up here. I'm going to pretty much skip the rest of that because I was like skimming it and it was just going over the same shit. It's just going over the same thing. This aspect of problem solving was not used, but here we can see that ill-defined. Like I don't care. I really don't care. I want to learn about the applications and the key points we'll we'll pick up with the next space with those, and then we'll read chapter 10 probably as part of that too. But I don't care about this. This is just like killing me. It feels like he's just rambling. So I'm gonna cut it here. I'm gonna, if you guys want to discuss it, that's more interesting. So I can stick around for that. But I'm not gonna keep reading this chapter. I'm just gonna skip to the applications and the key points when we get to the next space. But yeah, Baron, any thoughts? Any thoughts about this chapter? Problem solving, nonlinear problem solving. Let me see if I can remember any of the other stuff. The changing your problem solving strategies while you're in the middle of it, and your perception defining your goals, and your goals defining your perception. Any thoughts on all this stuff?
Yeah, no, I think it's great stuff. I think, just the fact that you hit a wall here, it's not a problem. I think it's a really interesting concept. So it makes me want to go get the book, but just to review it on my own. But yeah, your perceptions change with your goals. That's important to understand. That's important to understand, because people in different professions or in different walks of life, being cognizant of how their outlook might be different than yours is going to help you in politics and in life and things like that. Especially if, as a politician or as a regulator, or maybe one of these groypers ends up in some position, to have the mental flexibility to put yourself in other people's shoes, to see where they're coming from, how you might be able to help them, things like that. That's important. um and having the being nimble enough to change strategies midstream. There's like this bias against flip-flopping, right? And that's fine when it comes to sort of your core beliefs, like you don't want to be a flip-flopper on like the Apostles' Creed or something, right? But when you're talking about how to you know regulate the securities industry, like new information might come to you that you need to just adjust to. So there's two different things, right?
Yeah. I think people get caught up in that. I think you actually articulated something that I kind of like was thinking about, but I couldn't say it. But yeah, like the problem solving is separate from your values, and I do think values shape your perception, but those shouldn't change. I mean, like at some point you're gonna find the values that are right for you, and right for your spirit, so to speak. But like the problem solving skills are just ways to achieve your goals according to your values. So it's like the realigning your problem solving and realigning your goals uh, to the values that are pretty much like those are the things that don't change. Those are the what would you call it? Like the signs on the horizon, the landmark that you're like always kind of reaching towards. You're always trying to get towards that. The problem solving may change, the goals may change, the steps you take might change, but what you're working towards should be the same. Uh, like the underlying you essentially there's like always one underlying goal, which is to like I guess what would you call it? Like make it make right with your spirit, make right with God, live a good life, and be a good person, and like that there's different ways to interpret that, I guess, depending on your 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 individual belief. But yeah, the ways you achieve that are going to change, but that underlying core belief shouldn't change. You shouldn't just be blowing in the wind. You shouldn't just be flip flopping, like you said, day to day on, uh, I'm this denomination today. Actually, oh, you know what? These Straussians are pretty cool. Maybe they have something to say about natural law and shit like that. So, yeah, I totally see. There's like a whole interpretation. There's like a whole rabbit hole we could go down there. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually a good way to put it.
Yeah, very good. I mean, yeah, I mean, like in the most simplest terms, right? Maybe your job, your profession, your occupation is you're a loss prevention specialist at Walmart, right? And so like maybe your core value is that stealing is wrong, okay? the way you go about preventing it, that might change week to week, month to month, year to year as you gain new information, new knowledge, new skills and all this stuff. And like maybe there's some things you're willing to let slip so that you can do other things better. And it doesn't mean that you're like now in favor of stealing. I think that's like the
Yeah, yeah,
simplest analogy to make.
yeah, yeah. No, that's perfect. That's a really good example. Um, yeah, like moving the the security locks onto the black people hair stuff. Uh, that doesn't say that you don't care about the white people hair stuff being stolen. Maybe it's just not being stolen, so you don't have to worry about it. Like the sunscreen isn't being stolen, okay? But you know the weave section's a little empty after a Friday night at midnight. You know what I'm saying? So it's like yeah, maybe changing it based on information doesn't mean that you're wrong or that you were wrong. Maybe you're just like more right. Maybe your values didn't change. Maybe you just got better at achieving that the goal that you set out in the first place. So yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, and maybe even like just one more example might be like, you know, certain people get stuck in a rut of like, well, I'm gonna do things the hardworking way, the way my dad did it, the way my grandpa did it. I'm just gonna slug it out and grind it out or whatever. When really there's like a smarter way to do something, and they feel like they're like betraying like their values by like just updating methods. When really like
Yeah,
your
yeah,
core value of like achieving the goal of maybe of providing for your family or whatever your goal is like exactly the same, and you're just getting smarter and using more information. So
that's Hamiltonian, baby. Yeah, we like tools. Yeah, yeah, we like technology. We like internal improvements. Okay, factories are cool, actually.
yeah, it's
Power
like
tools.
maybe having like a national electronic transfer system, you know, like they came out with in the 70s or whatever, is more efficient than like state banks clearing paper checks manually or you know whatever. Like maybe it's not the like the mark of the beast or you know, um, so just stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think it's so true. I don't think people had perception about like cryptocurrency, 10 years ago. I don't think the general public did. And so quickly it shifted into like this polarized thing where like half the people think it's the mark of the beast, like you said. And the other half are like, I'm going to get rich. This is actually the future. Bitcoin's the future. We need to move everything onto Bitcoin. And it's like, I don't think anybody had an opinion on it 10 years ago. So everyone's perception changed. So now everyone's goals have changed. Like, how do I make money? That's affected by this now. So yeah,
Yeah,
the
that's actually yeah, that's an interesting is as people's goals differ, their perception differs on that. That's actually a very glaring example of that principle. We're salvaging the space. We're saving the space with that little nugget there at the end.
yeah, dude, it was getting bleak. I was reading and it felt like highway hypnosis. I'm like reading the lines and I felt like I just read this. I can't even tell if I switched pages. If I don't know if I swiped back or forward. It was so bad.
So
But
hey, I mean, hey, this little nugget is hiding here in this space recording for the groiper that waits listens through the whole thing to the end on his iPod or whatever.
2.5 hours in, 2.5 hours in, you get to hear the good stuff. So yeah, you made it to the end. All right. Hey, if you
It's
made it
like
to
the meme where the guy's mining for gold and he turns back like 2 inches away from it.
it's literally the meme. Yeah, just keep going, all right? Just keep going. And if I keep going, maybe I'll get the diamonds. But you know what? I'm tired. You know what? It's 3 a.m. I think I'm gonna go to sleep and get the diamonds tomorrow, okay? But yeah, any final parting words, Barn, before I get out of here? I'm uh I'm
Uh,
gassed.
no, man, I think we had some nice little points there at the end. So, yeah, thanks for doing the spaces.
Yeah, man. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. Hopefully everybody that stopped by, found some utility in this. But thanks for stopping by. If you did, thanks to all our speakers. And I will see you guys next time with the rest of chapter 9, which is the applications and the key points. and likely chapter 10 as an extension. But yeah, thanks for listening. Have a great night, and I'll talk to you guys next time.